Well, hello, everybody. It's Wendy Lloyd Curley. I'm going to be sending this video to the presidents and the vice presidents of every chapter, including the incoming presidents and vice presidents, if I know who you are. Okay. I've been working with the executive director team in New South Wales, and we have prepared a chapter success meeting template that we would like to recommend that you consider for use for your chapter success meetings to make them more efficient and more successful. So we've incorporated timings into these as well for you, because we have a feeling that a lot of the chapter success meetings are not being prepared for well by everybody, not just by the vice president and the president, but everybody is not preparing their reports. Instead, they're sort of making the reports up on the spot. So one thing is we're trying to fix the reporting and get it done in advance. And two, we're trying to allow you to really focus everybody on the agenda and the timing of the agenda. So let me share my screen with you. I'm going to share screen number 2. Share. Here we go. This is the chapter success meeting. I'm just going to go through it pretty quickly, as not a training per se, because you already know what the chapter success meeting is, because it's the same one that we've been doing for a couple of years now. Part 1 is 30 minutes long. The president facilitates the first part of the meeting. Now, even I had this wrong. I was doing some research preparing for this PowerPoint, and in the past, I've said that the vice president runs the whole meeting. Well, that's just not true. The president and the vice president run this together, and they prepare for it together. So the president facilitates the first part of the meeting. And the purpose of the meeting, I've attended a few chapter success meetings, and I love it because we are inviting our chapter members to come to these meetings, and we're getting brand new members participating. One of the problems with that, though, is that we don't tell them what the meeting's about. We didn't share with them a purpose. So I thought this was a really important slide to add. So running a consistent monthly chapter success meeting with all roles in attendance is one important key to success for a chapter. So that's the purpose. And it provides BNI members with tools for enhancing their business, their BNI success. Your participation in chapter success meetings will save you time and yield you referrals. So here's how, just in case you're wondering how. It'll save you time because you won't be wondering how to do things. It's sort of like training. If you understand the goal and the vision, then it makes each weekly meeting more efficient. It makes each one-to-one more efficient, and it really does save you time for your membership. The second thing is it will yield you referrals. And that's because if you have a successful chapter success meeting, you are going to have a balanced chapter with growth aspirations. So you're going to get more closed business per member every time. All right. So that's the purpose. Who is our scribe? This slide takes 0 seconds, really, but we need to make sure that we've identified a scribe, and it is best to be a membership committee member. So this is the time where the president would say, I've nominated Joe to be our scribe today. He's going to be taking notes in part 1 and in part 2, and then getting the minutes out to the chapter for part 1. Okay, so there you go. Joe's been nominated. The agenda and taking attendance. This would take 1 minute. It's the 1 minute to go through the agenda for everybody, but Joe, the scribe, is going to be taking attendance and saying who's there and just making that, taking those notes in the meeting. So no big deal. It shows who's required for the first half of the meeting and who's optional for the first half of the meeting. And then it shows who's required for the second half of the meeting and when they should leave. So the mentor coordinator only stays for the first part of part 2. Okay. Then we have the action items from the last chapter success meeting. The president prepares this slide, and it takes 5 minutes maximum. You are reviewing action items to say that they were done or not. So it is not a time to, oh, where were the actions? Does anybody have those? Were they, it's already done. It's on the slide. And those assigned dates, assigned to, due date, and notes, if there is an action that hasn't been completed, it doesn't need to be completed during the CSM. It needs to be done between the meetings. So take it offline and do it for the next meeting and figure out the due date, reestablish the due date. So this slide, 5 minutes maximum. The visitor update. This is a report. It does not need discussion. Number of unique visitors last month was X. It's a number. There were 52 unique visitors last month, or there were 5 visitors last month, or there were 105. Doesn't matter. It's just one number. State by name and category the visitors who submitted applications. So all you need to do is put in the name and the category of the people who did applications. The visitor host coordinator is to prepare this slide, but if they don't, then it needs to be done by the treasurer, who is in direct line up from the visitor host coordinator. All right. And then state by name and category the visitors who could convert to members with some additional follow-up. Now, I'm hoping that that's quite a few people that you're following up with, but I've listed 4 categories here. Take as much time as you need, but you don't really need to go into a lot of detail. It's just a report. You don't need to talk about who's done what. You already know because you've prepared the report. Okay. The member update. The vice president prepares this slide. This slide is for 3 minutes maximum. You state by name and category the new members from last month. That's it. Easy. You state by name and category the dropped members from last month. You don't need to go into detail about why. You discuss the goals of the chapter, and this is already written. The goal of the chapter should be net 1 if the chapter wants to remain the same size, and net 2 or more if they want to grow, period. So that's a really easy slide, and it's easily prepared in advance. The report review, chapter roster report. We use this on 2 slides. So the president prepares this slide, 3 minutes, most of the time is all this slide will take. During the leadership changeovers, it might take a little bit longer. So here are the questions you're answering. Does the chapter have all the leadership team members in place and trained, including all the passport mentors, sorry. So the answer to that is usually just yes. And occasionally there'll be a gap. Someone might have dropped, and so we need to refill a visitor host role, or we need to refill a membership committee member, or we need a new education coordinator because one's gone on maternity leave, whatever. Do any changes need to be made? We discuss those and say what they are. Do we need to engage the leadership changeover committee? This is only happening in April and October leadership changes. So when should we be engaging the leadership changeover committee? About 2 months before that. About 2 months before the leadership changeover. Okay. And there we go. Then the next slide has about 2 minutes of content on it. It's the chapter roster report part 2. At the bottom of the chapter roster report is the 3 monthly PALMS report. PALMS is bigger than just attendance, even though present, absent, late, medical, and substitute is what PALMS stands for. The report actually includes referrals, one-to-ones, visitors, thank you for closed business, and attendance. So in advance, the president should look at the trend compared to the chapter traffic lights to see if there is a change in performance that has been happening. Because remember, the chapter traffic lights takes a 6-month period, and this PALMS report only looks at the last 3 months. So you might see that you're actually on the way up or perhaps on the way down compared to the traffic lights. So it's a conversation 2 minutes long. Then there's a reports review for the chapter traffic lights. I've underlined the word chapter because some chapters I've noticed get confused here and they start talking about member traffic lights. But here we're talking about where the chapter is. And in this case, this is BNI United. They are in the green. They have 75 points. You can see what they need to do to improve in all of these areas. And you should show this part of the document. Show the detail for the chapter in advance, review the improvements that are possible in each area. Basically, highlight the low-hanging fruit. You aren't going to be able to improve in every area every month, but pick a couple that you think are really important and go with those. Okay? And then the next agenda item is other items. This should take about 5 minutes because it's not a time for those other items to be proposed. The time for those items to be proposed is before the meeting, probably about a week before. And if they haven't been proposed, then they get added to the action item list for next meeting. You don't take over the meeting with the other items section. This section can get very big if you don't control it. So what happens in this section? The treasurer reports on the bank balance and any adjustments needed that they would like to recommend for chapter dues. It's not a time for us to figure out what those numbers should be. It's a time for the treasurer to tell you what the numbers are and then to propose a change if necessary. Also, it's a time to discuss if the chapter needs to be looking for another venue and to make sure that venue relations are good. Usually that's a very quick conversation because often you aren't needing to move. How can concerns be addressed before they become written complaints? Any concerns that have been raised to the membership committee or the leadership team in advance of this meeting should already be on the agenda. They should already be listed there. Things like the venue and the room setup or the quality of the one-to-ones that people are doing or things like that. These are important elements. Growth. Do we need to plan a BNI game or special visitor event? Is our chapter well balanced? These are questions that can be answered in advance. And the answer is probably for both. Yes, we need to plan a game. And is our chapter well balanced? We can always improve, right? Always. So we would want to identify that in advance. All right. How did the weekly meeting look to the director consultant? If the director consultant is present, and in some instances they won't be, but you will want to ask for feedback from the director consultant before the meeting so that the director consultant can provide that to you if they're not present. Okay. And then the passport to success. The new members and their start date are listed. The progress that they've made, like they've got 8 out of 10 passport pages done, or they haven't done their MSP. Opportunities is a positive way of talking about the opportunities to help them, right? So this is a report. It is not a conversation really, unless there are specific areas where you're wondering if they need help. You'll notice I've got space for 6 new members on this page. And the reason I've got space for 6 new members here is I think that you're going to have people who are in their first, second, or third month. So as you're adding people, you want to keep them on until they graduate, finish their MSP, finish their passport, and you've welcomed them into the chapter. Okay. So 5 minutes maximum for that. In fact, I don't really think it would even take that long. That's the end of part 1. Thank everybody else for attending. So the president can say thank you for attending. The next part of the meeting is for the membership committee, including the vice president, which I don't even think you need to say, but just in case. The vice president is part of the membership committee and the mentor coordinator only. So we can all leave now. The president stands up, packs their stuff up and goes. And so does everybody else who's not on the membership committee or the mentor coordinator. And that's because the next part of the meeting is 30 minutes long and it is for the membership committee only. The vice president chairs this part of the meeting. We review the member traffic lights with the mentor coordinator. This should take about 5 minutes maximum. The vice president provides the latest member traffic lights on the screen or printed, depending on whether you're in person or not. If you're in person, make sure that people can read what's on the screen if you're only going to be providing it that way. But I suggest that you also provide it in printed format so that people can see it. Also, you might want to send that out in advance so that the membership committee and that can make sure that they've looked at it. All right. all of the rest of that makes sense to you. Let's look at the second bullet point there. For the members in the bottom three positions, what can be done to help them improve their performance? Oftentimes those might be people in the that are in the passport program, the mentors, and that's not a good assumption. They should not be there. We should be starting them very strong. So if they complete their member success program for CEUs, complete 1 to 2 one-to-ones per week, and attend the meetings regularly, they're already at 60 points, and that's yellow. So if they add a little bit of the rest, they'll even be higher than that. So don't assume that a new member should start in the red or gray, because they shouldn't. They should be mentored to start in the yellow or green. Okay. Then you want to discuss how the mentor coordinator can help support getting these members more engaged. They don't have to do all the work, but they're in charge of coordinating it. So let's go ahead and work with them. At that point, the membership committee only is part of the meeting, and the mentor coordinator can leave. Okay. And then the rest is for the membership committee. So the 7-month reviews, we review the completed reports and we review the upcoming reports needed. These are prepared in advance. So we know who we did last month and we know who we're going to do this month. And we get about 2 minutes per member to discuss it. What we do here is we discuss the results. And what we do here is we figure out who's going to do the 7-month reviews. Okay. Approving renewals. The vice president prepares this slide and they see the membership dues report to come up with this. So we use 2 minutes per member. Palms and traffic lights should be reviewed in advance for all renewals. So send the information out. Who is up for renewal in the next 60 days? If the person's going to be renewed, we can communicate that immediately to them, and we update BNI Connect to review the approval. And then there's a note there if they're not going to be renewed, because it's really important that we handle those perfectly. Progress of written complaints. Notice that this is not a discussion of written complaints. They should be handled on receipt as we go. All right. And also any chapter dues issues. If people are not paying the treasurer, that's an issue and it needs to be dealt with by the membership committee. And I think the last slide here is about recommendations, 5 minutes max. Are there any actions that we need to capture for the president based on what we've learned? Any actions for the director consultant based on what we've learned? And then we need to ensure the scribe has captured all the action items and commits to send the meeting notes to the vice president for review. The circulation of the membership committee notes never goes to the chapter. That stays for the membership committee. But the first half content can be nicely packaged and sent to the chapters. All right. End of part 2. Thank you for attending. You can adjourn, or if you've got some time, you can coordinate and schedule interviews, reference checks, and online due diligence that's required for new applications that you might have received. That is not part of the chapter success meeting agenda, and they need to be dealt with on a weekly or a daily basis rather than on a monthly basis. And that, my friends, is my little share with you on what we do in the chapter success meetings. I hope that this presentation helps you get them to be short, sharp, efficient. Prepare in advance and you will be able to give yourself some time back. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.